staying healthy, staying sexy, staying young is what living life is all about. And if you have doctors that have proven treatments that keep people young and healthy so they don't get sick, you want people to know about these treatments and that they exist.
This episode is brought to you by Gainswave. Gainswave is a treatment done at your doctor's office to optimize erection quality without the needs of Viagra, Cialis. It's non-surgical, there's no needles, and it has an amazing success rate. To find a Gainswave provider, go to gainswave.com. That's GAINSWAVE.com. This is Mark L. White with Health Hacks, and today I am talking to Debra Atkinson. And first of all, I'm very excited to be talking to you because I just turned 50 this year. I know that you have done a lot of talking and given a lot of information about how women can live the best life at the age of 50. Mm-hmm. Does this also apply to men?
Well, we'll let you in on a few secrets. For sure, you have fewer hormones and they tend to behave better. Mm-hmm. So it's a little less problematic for you than it is for us, just in fairness.
So we become pussycats at 50. What can I expect from my wife when she turns 50 in a couple years?
Be very nice. Yeah. So yeah, mood swings can happen, but here's the thing. So anything I say right now, I want every listener to be thinking, unless you do something to counter it. Because if you're proactive, you don't have to have these things. They're not automatic. And I think you read anything in the media or you're scrolling through your timeline, goodness sakes, on Facebook, you read the worst of the worst, and then your expectation is the worst. And sometimes when you plant that seed, you get it. So it's really important that, those things we've heard, this automatically happens with age, only if you're not doing something about it. And we have so much more power than we ever have. So happy birthday, by the way. Thank you. There's never been a better time to be 50 or over, ever. So mood swings can happen. Night sweats, hot flashes can happen. Brain fog can happen. Weight gain, belly fat. We've got all kinds of fat cells that can relocate themselves to the belly. But again, there are ways to counter every single one of those.
So tell me about yourself. Like, did you just turn 50 and say, oh my God, I have to do something? Or did you prepare so that you lived your best life at 50?
I kind of took one for the team, if we can call it that. So this is year 36 for me in the fitness industry, and I'm about to be 56. At 49, I turned my world upside down and quit my job. And I said, lots of great things had been happening and I wanted to reach more people. And, about at that moment, the day after, I panicked. like how was I going to pay college tuition that was starting in 8 months for my son? And what if I didn't reach more people? I reached no people. And what if I ran out of money? So, at 49, I wasn't yet feeling anything telling me that I'm right there going into menopause, but we know the average age is 51.2. And so, adding stress to whatever might have been going on under the hood certainly turned my world upside down. But I discovered a secret accidentally that is really what formed what I do at Flipping 50. So yes, I went through about 14 months of, can I say hell on the show? Is this a family show?
No, it's not a family show.
Okay, great. So, and it was hormone hell. And then I figured out, holy crap, what I just discovered accidentally is actually what a lot of women need to hear. We've been taught the wrong thing our entire lives. And when we finally get back to finding time for us, or we're going through menopause, experiencing weight gain, what we will tend to do is actually make it worse, not better. So it became a mission to share that with all the women that I'd worked with for 30 years.
Obviously, the question is, what is the secret?
The secret is exercise less and eat more.
Okay, that's obviously counterintuitive to what
Yes,
everybody else has heard.
exactly.
So share with me how did you come up with that, and like why is eating more, when they say like intermittent fasting, eat fewer
Right.
calories helps you live longer, why is eating more going to help us stay young?
So I've got to finish either both of those um, pieces of advice with of the right thing, right? The right type and the right timing. And I don't disclude or exclude intermittent fasting from the piece of the puzzle, but I
Hmm.
think it's important that anybody who tries that, particularly at midlife, already has a really good relationship with food and the foods that
Hmm.
are working for her right now. Because if you don't jump off of a good platform and then always come back and land on a good platform, that intermittent fasting potentially may not help. And let's face it, not eating for some people is stress. I mean, your body kind of likes food regularly. So if you first try that and your body is already in chaos and stress, it may not be the best time. The first place most of us need to start intermittent fasting is simply between meals and overnight. Let's
Hmm.
just start there. And a lot of people aren't doing that yet. So that would be a great start. How did I discover? The secret was, at 49, when I had that panic attack, I became somebody who exercised for 20 minutes a day. And I had been somebody who exercised probably, well over 10 hours a week.
Hmm.
And and after about a year of working diligently at my laptop and my keyboard and sitting far more than I ever had, I looked better. I had more energy. I was stronger and healthier than I had been when I was exercising more. And even I said, what? That's completely against everything I had been taught and everything I had taught for decades. So I dug into what happened to me. And what I found is in the research, clearly women are poorly represented. Only 39% of all exercise science research features women.
Hmm.
And you and I opened up with, what's the difference between your hormones and ours? You're clearly winning. We go through 7 different hormone
Hmm.
stages potentially if we choose to. So women who don't necessarily choose childbearing, or who aren't fortunate enough to do it, they may not go through all 7, but you don't go through that many changes. You go through maybe 2, right? And your second of those is much more mild than
Hmm.
ours is. So if we say, 39% of all research features females, a fraction of that features females at any one of those phases.
Hmm.
So it's like you would never go to Vegas and gamble with those kind of odds. But if you've been following an exercise program, potentially that's what you've been doing, just gambling.
So optimizing hormones obviously is something that I know that you've talked about. Like,
Yeah.
should every woman about to go through menopause consider bioidentical hormones? And what are some of the myths that you've seen?
Well, so to answer that question, should every woman consider? I would say no, but then if you ask me, should every woman exclude it? I would also say no to that. I think keep it in mind as an option. But
Hmm.
I'm also thinking any prescription drug or medicine that you or I would take, we wouldn't expect it to do all the work. We would know we needed to get rest. We needed to reduce our stress. We needed to eat the right things or avoid the wrong things. We needed certain amounts of exercise, but not too much and not too little. So the same is true for hormones. Everything we do influences hormones, and exercise is no different. Exercise influences hormones and is influenced by them. So, taking a good look at our lifestyle habits from the moment we wake up to the moment we wake up. So, including overnight, not
Hmm.
just to the moment we go to sleep. Hormones are either positively or negatively affected, and they control our fat burning and fat storage.
Hmm. I think a lot of people, when they hit our age, 50, I know with me, 50 was the first time you kind of looked at your life and you're saying like your mind's a lot of it's mindset because you're looking and you're saying, okay,
Yeah.
how many more years do I have left that I can continue to achieve? Because you have the wisdom, like you feel great wisdom wise, but you're starting to see the downhill slope, if you will.
Yeah, well, and we don't need to. I think, right now it's not as much about anti-aging as pro-aging.
Mhm.
So how can I be the best I can be at 50? And I think a lot of women may say once they're gaining weight or feeling like they've slowed down a little bit, I want to get my body back, or I want to get
Mhm.
back to how I used to feel. And I don't think we're going back there. The goal is to let's look forward and how can I be the absolute best at this age, which may be, looking and feeling better even than when you were 30, as long as you don't try to exercise and eat the way you did when you were 30.
So, the other thing that comes up is sex, vaginal dryness.
Yeah.
Women don't want to have sex anymore. Guys are also going through male menopause or
Yeah.
andropause. And you see a lot, kids are moving out of the house. How do you keep your sex life spicy at 50?
Such a great question. And I find that a lot of clients who reach me when we're doing a preliminary assessment, it's one of the questions they're surprised I ask, but they're also glad somebody asked it because they don't necessarily have that
Mhm.
conversation with their Western trained doctor, and they don't talk about it with their spouse or their friends either. They're just kind of dealing with it. But for sure, we look at what kind of exercise they're doing. So we know we need testosterone in order to, feel good in the bedroom, feel good in the boardroom, right?
Mhm.
Either one, we need a little bit of that confidence and control. And women have less testosterone than men do, but we need it just as much, that little bit. So strength training is a girl's best friend as well as guys. And long endurance exercise is the killer of testosterone when it comes to exercise.
So stay away from running.
Right. Well,
Um,
running for long periods of time anyway. Yeah.
so really heavy lifting is
Heavy
good.
lifting. Yep. Reaching fatigue and not necessarily going in and lifting. So a lot of times people will report to me, I'm lifting weights 5 days a week, or
Mhm.
I'm in the gym for at least an hour and a half doing weight training. And that really is not the point either. The point is reaching fatigue. And you can do that in 10 or 20 minutes with your major muscle groups and get in and get out. That's what you're after.
So when you work with your clients, you're working with them more on healthy habits such as exercise and diet.
Exercise, diet, sleep, stress. So it's looking at what's the biggest challenge for this particular person right now.
Mhm.
So if somebody isn't sleeping, then we're working with nutrition, we're working with exercise, but we're working in the bent of let's improve the sleep. So every decision we make is about improving the sleep as opposed to improving the exercise performance. So sleep first, and then the rest will come and be better because we've got to optimize the hormones that happen during sleep in order for exercise to work.
So what I'm hearing is that as long as we're optimizing hormones in women, and I think this is also true in men, as long as somebody has healthy hormones, it's easier to make sure that they follow these healthy habits so they can stay young. Is that accurate?
So as long as they follow the healthy habits, they're more likely to have balanced hormones. So can I reverse that for you? Does that make sense? So it's
It,
not the healthy hormones that make the habits easy. It's the habits that will help optimize the hormones.
but things like, because we change our habits as we age. So as we get older, you're saying let's eat more at the right foods within a certain time. So the intermittent fasting, I get right foods, eat more of the right foods. Are we saying, okay, you can eat as much vegetables as you want, or you can eat as much cookies as you want?
No.
Oh,
No. So of course we're going to try and reduce sugar. We're going to try to reduce saturated fats. we're going to ideally walk somebody through a blueprint of testing some of those high sensitivity foods. So while dairy might have been great when they were growing up, it may not be the ideal for them right now, or at least for the moment. So looking at some of the things like dairy and wheat and gluten can be trigger foods for some of these women right now. So we're removing them temporarily to see if we can improve how they feel. And that often adds energy that gets them back to an exercise program because they feel better or feel less conscious of gas and bloating that kind of deters them from wanting to exercise.
How about red meat? That's really something that a lot of people are looking at right now.
Yep. Great question. So first of all, I mean, I would respect anyone's personal preference, and I would respect any diagnosis. So a special condition may mean that somebody's got to look at that. But I think, otherwise, there's a lot of positives to red meat that you may want to look at as well. So a lack of energy is probably one of the number one complaints of someone who end up finding me. And the need for iron is, solved with red meat in some way. So it's choosing the type of red meat, and I'm one to choose more wild options than not. That we're talking bison or elk or something that's not necessarily farm raised, anti-hormone, and then reasonably including that in your diet, not always including that in your diet.
So when you turned 49, going back to your hormone hell, you changed your diet and then your hormones got back in line, or like tell me about that. And how did you come across, did you experiment with different diets and you kind of came up with a formula?
So no. So first of all, what I changed first was the exercise. I went from exercising hours a week, and then I changed to exercising maybe 20 minutes a week. I would let myself get away from what I was doing, building an online business, for about 20 minutes a day, right? And just barely getting some exercise and movement. And that was the first change I made. But when you do that, you make every minute count. When you have an hour, there's a lot of scrolling going on in the gym. I don't know if you've noticed that, right? So
Yep.
People are not necessarily exercising for an hour. They're there for an hour. You make every minute count when you have 20 minutes, and then you do get more conscious about what you're eating because that becomes a bigger factor. There isn't the compensation piece where you can say to yourself, well, I exercise, so I can eat this. So I was more careful, but I wasn't really changing what I was eating until probably well into almost a year later, when I realized what an impact naturally changing what I was eating had. And that was simply increasing the amount of vegetables that I was eating, making sure I was eating adequate protein, which is probably another topic we should talk about with women over 50. That is one of the things that they tend to skip or keep too low. And the exercise, again, isn't going to have a positive effect without enough protein.
Well, in like plant-based diets, you see that you get enough protein as long as you're eating the nuts and the beans and the quinoa. Like, if somebody's wanting to transition to a plant-based diet, how do they get enough protein?
It's tricky. And I did go through that experiment. For 3 months, said, okay, I'm gonna try to do this, because I had a lot of people coming to me saying I'm vegetarian or I'm vegan. And what I found is I was eating the same foods over and over and over, and that became a red flag for me. That can't be good, right? When we're not getting enough variety and you're continuing to go to the same foods that potentially are bothersome for you. So the same amount of beans or chickpeas or legumes. And I was, at the time I was trying soy, and many of those foods are trigger foods. So I was also felt good after the first month. Second month, not quite so much. And by the third month, I was actually feeling weaker and fatigued. So I think there's room for those people who thrive on a plant-based diet, more power to you. Not everybody can. So I think you've got to really listen to what's happening for your body. How do you respond? And the ways to know are, if you're monitoring your weight, make sure that you're also monitoring your body composition so you're not losing muscle mass. So you really got to know what that number is.
So I'm going to share a secret with you. I'm on week 3 of my vegan diet. I haven't touched meat or dairy in 3 weeks. I think I'm on tomorrow's going to be day 21. And I'm committed.
How you feeling?
I feel great, actually.
Yeah.
My energy levels are good. For lunch I had a cauliflower rice bowl downstairs, and it's probably the 5th time in the last 3 weeks I've eaten that. I've also done intermittent fasting, so I don't start eating until noon. So I stop eating at 8. And I've lost a lot of weight. I do monitor my body composition. I've lost 7 pounds. My muscle mass has stayed good so far.
Good.
So far, so good. But, like hearing what you're saying, over the next 2 to 3 months, I'm going to be very cognizant of my energy. And, I do miss fish. I love sushi. So there's times that you go out to a steakhouse and you're like, God, I really want to eat that Wagyu beef, and you have to pass.
That's funny. That's what I miss too. I loved sushi. I think that was probably the last meal, the last day before I started.
Yeah, it's but I do think I'm getting enough protein, because you find that you eat a lot of tofu and a lot of other things. I've been eating a lot of Beyond Burgers, which to me taste like, are these Impossible Burgers? They taste just like hamburgers.
Yeah. So is your intention to continue forever, or as long as what's the experiment?
So when I turned 50, I did a calcium score, and I recommend a calcium score to anybody, which takes a look at your arteries, and it should be 0. And my calcium score was 44, which isn't great. It's not horrible. Horrible's over 100, but once you start having calcified arteries, it just gets worse. And so I talked to one of my cardiologist friends who said, really, you can just get on Lipitor and be on Lipitor the rest of your life, or you can cut out saturated meats and dairy. So I decided to do this for 30 days and then test my cholesterol levels and my calcium score again. And if it's reducing and I feel good, I'm going to stay on it. And if not, I'll consider what to do then.
Got it. How about weight training? Are you doing some weight training?
I am. I try to work out, 3-4 times a week now. I do boot camp style training, like Barry's boot camp. I also do heavy weights maybe once or twice a week.
Great.
I love running. That's I like that. And I have cut that out pretty much. I run maybe once every couple weeks now. So I have changed naturally. And one of the reasons I stopped running wasn't because I was losing muscle mass. It was because I kept getting injured, which is probably another thing we should talk about.
Yes.
My wife's a exercise fiend. She works out at least an hour a day every day. She's 46, and she's had hip issues lately, and she's now switching to yoga. What do you think about yoga?
I think there are so many limbs of yoga. To say a blanket statement to anybody listening, I don't want to confuse them. So if you've tried a yoga and it hasn't worked, try a different yoga, because there's one for everybody. So it depends, but it's funny that you mentioned, a hip injury. Hip injuries and bursitis, for instance, any itis, plantar fasciitis, tendinitis are very common in women in perimenopause, menopause, and just postmenopause. So we know now enough to know there's a hormone connection. It's not exactly clear what it is that's causing that connection, but we do know that there is one. So, switching at least temporarily, or switching so that you rebalance and or realign your body so that you can move better. Like you, when I hear somebody say, I love running, that's what I love, I'm doing less of it now because I keep getting injured. I think you want to choose physically and you want to choose mentally too.
Mhm.
So you want to find a way to keep that thing that gives you joy in your life, but maybe just less, to a lesser extent than you used to do it. So you can continue doing it for the rest of your life, as opposed to, every time, all the time.
I think that leads to a good point. What you're saying is like the sense of joy. And as I approached 50, and also as I see my friends approaching 50, I think there's this mind shift where we want to start living for a sense of purpose or a sense for greater good or giving back. And a lot of priorities change.
Yeah.
How important is a woman who turns 50 to have some sense of purpose, especially a career woman who spends her life raising the kids? The kids go off away to college. She's had a career. How important is it that she finds her own purpose?
I call that a cry why. I think a lot of people think, you got to find your why, especially find it now so that when you're 80 or you're 90, you've still got a reason to get up in the morning. But I like to think of that as a cry why. It's moving enough to actually bring tears to your eyes. And so it's truly yours, not somebody else's, not lip service. But I think it's a big part of, not everybody loves exercise. It sounds like you do or did, right?
Mhm.
And I certainly do. And I get, though, that I've had a love-hate relationship with a lot of my clients, meaning they hated to see me coming and loved to see me going, right, when the session was over. But I think if you understand the connection, and now we almost have to, because it's so clear in research that you can't be healthy without exercise. Finding your sweet spot for exercise is a must for everybody. And yet, if you're not quite motivated, it's not necessarily about motivation,
Mhm.
it's about commitment. And when you have a reason why, maybe that is so that you can be there for your family, you can take care of somebody else. Maybe it's so that you can swing those grandchildren around
Mhm.
and not sit at the bottom of the hill when everybody's hiking up the hill. You're actually in it, you're doing it with them. So I think finding the reason why you do that on a regular basis that brings some urgency to it is really important.
So when you turn 60, are you going to come out with how to stay hot at 60, 70? Like what's next for you to?
So, flipping 50 is really more about flipping the second 50 than it is just the 50. The importance and the apparent need for 50 is that more significant changes happen just leading up to and on the other side of 50 than
Mhm.
they do at 60. But the real piece is, it's about your ability. It's really not about age, right? It's about how are you feeling. I was a girl that grew up in the Midwest, in the middle of the Midwest, and I could look around me and I could see people I could help everywhere. I moved to Boulder, Colorado, and
Mm.
realized that the same age people actually move there so that they will become more active. So, a 70-year-old is not a 70-year-old, a 70-year-old, right? It's what you do with it, how you think about it, what
Mhm.
you want for the rest of your life. It's a choice. So, I think it's just spreading that message that your expectation will set you up.
So really, it sounds like your purpose is to help as many women when they approach 50 feel great about themselves and know that there's a wonderful life after 50.
That's exactly right. And to get the message out there that there's nobody more influential and powerful in the world than a middle-aged woman.
Hmm.
She influences 3 generations.
That's true. You have the aging parents. You
Yep.
have
Your
even
children, your
and even
spouse, your friends. Yeah.
you're absolutely right. This is
Yeah.
wonderful stuff. If somebody wanted, do you have anything on your website where they can learn more, or do you have something that they can take away?
Absolutely. So, quick quick little ways to make little changes to habits you probably are already conscious of. I've got a book called Hot Not Bothered, and you can get a free copy, just a digital download in minutes at Flipping50. That's all words spelled out. .com/hot not bothered.
Great. We'll have the links in the show notes. I really appreciate our time together, Debra. I really do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good luck on your vegan journey.
Thank you. Take care.